in our experience chatting with lawyers, there's this common sentiment that winning a judgment and actually collecting on it are two very different things. By coming at it from a pre-litigation angle, oftentimes we're able to determine if defendants have assets that are worth going on.
Hi, guys. Thanks both for joining there. So joined by Richard King, who's our senior associate over in the Hong Kong office for Futurum Risk, and Ghina Abdul, who's based in our Singapore office. Both senior associates and working on our cases across Asia and globally of mainly looking around asset tracing and unpicking complex issues. So some areas that we wanted to discuss today to, provide some context to around some of our investigations. As a business, we commonly look at subtle behavioural signals and behavioural cues. And the area we wanted to focus on today was looking at how we utilise these subtle behavioural signals from social media and how they enhance an investigation. So putting that question across to you, Richard, could you give us some insight into that?
Yeah, no, thank you very much for having me, James. I think when I'm performing investigations, on social media profiles, behaviors I'm looking for, I'd say would be inconsistencies. That would be the key kind of behavioral activity I'm looking for. The reason why is it displays a lot about the subject, right? We're looking for mismatches between what's claimed and what can be proven by cold, hard evidence. Are profiles across their platforms consistent? Does their CV match up with what their LinkedIn says? Or does their asset and lifestyle indicators misalign with their publicly stated financial position? I think one of the first cases I took on was a matrimonial case where one of the spouses in question had claimed that they had a very low level of income, but were constantly traveling around various countries, living in luxury housing, etc. So that would kind of warrant further investigation. These kind of discrepancies become a trigger for, I'd say, what we would look at as more of an enhanced investigation rather than a standard kind of asset trace. We're also looking for activity, patterns of activity, right? Has there been a sudden change in behavior? Have social media accounts suddenly been deactivated, or has there been a concerted attempt to remove data from the internet? We've had certain cases where it's clear there's been a concerted attempt to scrub certain pieces of adverse content from search results. And in conclusion, what we're looking for is a corroboration threshold of behavior, right? A single kind of lone incident shouldn't be able to carry an investigation on its own. What we are looking for is corroboration from multiple credible sources. And just to wrap that up, another thing is just bias mitigation as well, right? Behavioral inference can often lead to a rapid creep in bias. And so we need to be rigorous in our investigations. We need to make sure that we've also looked for evidence that could disconfirm or disprove, the topic that we're looking for, not just corroborating signals.
Excellent. Thanks for that. And over to you, Gina, focusing on how we conduct online and offline intelligence data gathering and those resources and how they contribute to complex asset investigations. So if we were looking at moving an investigation from a desktop, conventional data scrape aggregation, and then looking to deploy human intelligence locally on the ground. Can you talk about that flow and how that works?
Okay, so I like what Richard said. It's about the inconsistency, and also we want to check. So, uh, we use online intelligence for like data scraping and the uses of aggreg aggregator. Sorry. It gives you some sort of like a direction to look at, but it doesn't confirm. It doesn't give you an accurate picture, a complete picture. So offline intelligence help us to give a clear picture. So in places like Indonesia, for instance, online intelligence is not very comprehensive and reliable. Even the online registered corporate online corporate online platform Ahu. We can see. I mean, I've done a lot of work, and in one instance, I could find information on a company on day one, but on day two they remove it, and on day three it's back again. So it's very difficult. So sometimes we need people on the ground to look to get this information, and some information is not even possible to do it, like land registration. You the record is not, it's not even online, so it's a physical. So we definitely need boots on ground. But I think more crucially, some of the information that we get online, it does not give a very comprehensive picture on the assets that someone receive. For instance, again, Indonesia, I would like to see myself as Indonesianese. A lot of the companies we see, they're very connected to the political very connected to politician, but that does not automatically that does not automatically mean it's a red flag, you know. So we need to understand the relationship and whether there's any unfair advantage involved. So that can only be done with boots on the ground, and that's something that Futurism does really well.
Excellent. Thanks for that. And, over the last couple of months, we've been going out to visit, law firms and other clients across, Asia Pacific. You've both been party to that. And we've been doing these lunch and learn workshops. And those have been focusing on, asset tracing where online meets offline intelligence. Law firms seem to, be very keen for us to come in and conduct these. Gina, what do you think are the benefits for law firms, and why do you think that they want us to come in and deliver a workshop for 60 to 90 minutes?
Yeah, I think more importantly is these lawyers that we spoke to, most of them are already very good at desktop research, but what they want to know is the limitations and what can be done more, either via the offline offline invest intelligence. So we give them like a rough a rough idea of how we conduct it and the risks involved and the limitations and what can be achieved, and all of with the information that we provide to them, it gives them the ability to advise their client and what they can get, and the ultimately the goal that they want to achieve. So I guess if I were to sum it up in one sentence, it gives them the information they need to strategize, so that they can help to strategize their relationship with their clients, especially in disputes and etc.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. And to just finish up with the last question here, Richard, why would a law firm or a client benefit from using a third party provider like Futurum, to provide corporate intelligence or investigations? Some of the big law firms and big organizations have their own investigation departments. They have their own OSINT teams, analysts and researchers. Why would they come to a specialist like ourselves?
I think there's a few key reasons as to why firms would come to find us. Firstly, I think in our experience chatting with lawyers, there's this common sentiment that winning a judgment and actually collecting on it are two very different things. By coming at it from a pre-litigation angle, oftentimes we're able to determine if defendants have assets that are worth going after. We are also looking for existing leverage. A lot of times, people who are involved in fraud or nefarious activities likely have other parts of their, history that are relatively unsavory, and they wouldn't like that coming to light. And oftentimes, we've had several cases where we've looked into seemingly, I think, prestigious might be a strong word, but, good members of society, and realize that they've had history either being involved with, political city level fraud rings, or, they've been involved in boiler room fraud historically as well. And another reason would be risk management, for a law firm themselves. A lot of times there could be a conflict of interest, there could be reputational exposure for law firms when they're conducting this sort of work. And by having us on board, it allows law firms to know that they're getting a solid, good product delivered by experienced investigators.
Excellent, thanks. So just to summarize, on topic areas that we've spoken about here, increasingly the teams are using, subtle behavioral signals and the use of, comparison from, a subject's behavior as it moves along on social media, or what they're doing with opening and closing businesses, or how they interact online. You know, th Secondly, the point is here, an investigation is, can be done just via desktop, but ultimately you've got to combine, investigation skills, intelligence skills that we've built up and learn over the years and decades even, and utilizing specialist tools, which some organizations don't have. Marketplace, understanding what the client wants and understanding how we can better improve the product that we offer, so that the end result is achieved, the asset is recovered, the case is solved, or the case is won, as it were. So thank you both to Gina and Richard. I think that's been a useful session, and look forward to chatting again soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.